In every shadow, there's a story the world tried to forget. In every silence, a scream that never stopped echoing. These are the truths buried in cold archives and blood-stained snow. Welcome to the DREAD Diaries, where fear is always real. Hit subscribe, because once you step into this story, you're going to wish you had someone watching your back. The night the Scarborough family drove their station wagon out of the TNT area, the sky over Point Pleasant hung low with winter fog. The kind that swallowed sound. The kind that made headlights feel useless. The kind that forced everyone in this small West Virginia town to speak in half sentences, as if they feared the darkness might overhear. Their car was found at 3:17 a.m., pulled halfway off an access road north of the munitions ruins. Both front doors hanging open. The engine still warm. The radio cycling through static. No sign of the family. By sunrise, the sheriff's department had roped off the area, and locals gathered in a tight, anxious cluster behind the tape. No one wanted to admit the same thing out loud, but the whispers spread faster than the wind. It's happening again. Did they see it? Did it take them? Howard Mason, a volunteer firefighter with 26 years on the job and the kind of face carved by smoke and grief, was the first to step deep into the ruins. He moved through the overgrown paths with a flashlight trembling in his grip. The ground was frozen, except for a set of deep impressions leading away from the road, three-toed heavy, spaced far apart. Not footprints. Not tracks. Something in between. The same kind carved into mud near the abandoned North Power Plant last month. Nearby, a torn scrap of fabric clung to a branch. A child's scarf, caught on the bark like it had been yanked away mid-run. Howard swallowed hard, forced himself to press on, and then heard it, something slicing the air overhead. A rush of wind, sharp and cold and wrong, as if it came from wings too large for anything alive out here. He froze. Then the radio on his hip crackled with distorted voices, looped whispers, and a distant metallic groan. When he returned to the road, his hands were shaking so badly he could barely write his report. That was the official beginning of the investigation. The unofficial beginning had started weeks earlier. Point Pleasant wasn't a town built for fear. It was built on river trade, old brick streets, late-night diners, and the routine comfort of knowing everyone by name. But when the first incident was reported, two young couples claiming they saw a massive figure in the TNT area with glowing red eyes, it spread like a sickness. Nobody joked about it. Not really. Not after the second report. Or the third. Or the fourth. By late November 1966, nearly every resident had either seen something unusual, heard something in the woods, or felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched while driving at night. Deputy Sheriff Harlan Riggs took the sightings seriously, not because he believed in monsters, but because he understood fear. Fear makes people reckless. Fear makes them disappear into the dark searching for answers. Fear is as real as any predator. He built a map of the town and pinned every report, forming a tight crescent around the old munition silos. The epicenter wasn't paranormal. It was historical. Government-built. Structurally unstable. A place locals called the Labyrinth, because the tunnels beneath the concrete domes stretched deeper than anyone wanted to admit. The TNT area had been dangerous long before the stories began. That evening, Riggs interviewed the last person believed to have seen the Scarboroughs alive, a gas station attendant named Miller. Shifted in his seat a lot. Wiped his hands on his work shirt. Avoided eye contact. They asked for directions, he said. Said they were headed home but wanted to take the long route. Said they didn't want to drive through town. Why? Riggs pressed. Miller hesitated. Said someone was following them. The air in the room tightened. A truck? A man? Riggs asked. Miller swallowed. They didn't say a person. The next morning, the search teams expanded the perimeter. Civilians volunteered, but Riggs turned them away. He didn't want anyone else wandering too far into that broken maze of concrete and trees. Howard found the second clue, a disposable camera, half buried in frost, its casing cracked. He handed it to Riggs without speaking. They took it back to the station, careful not to damage it further, and left it with the evidence technician who promised to salvage whatever images were left. The rest of the day slipped by in a haze of interviews, rumors, and the rising panic of a town that had run out of explanations. As night fell, Riggs returned to his office and found a stack of old documents from the county records department sitting on his desk. No note. No signature. Inside were blueprints of the TNT area tunnels and reports from the 1940s describing structural failures, sealed passageways, and large ventilation shafts. But one detail stopped Riggs cold. A red ink circle around section D12, with a single handwritten line beneath it. Restricted. Experimental wildlife control. No date. No explanation. And no record of any such program ever being conducted. Riggs stared at the words until they blurred. The room seemed to tighten around him, squeezing. The radio on his desk flickered, briefly picking up static from a nearby patrol car. Then a voice cut through, raw, frayed, panicked. "Sheriff, something just moved across the North Ridge. Big. Fast. Too fast." Riggs bolted upright. "How big?" he demanded. A pause. A breath. Bigger than a man. Outside, the wind hit the windows with a sudden violent force, rattling the glass as if something enormous had just swept past the building. And at that exact moment, the evidence technician burst into Riggs's office, pale, sweating, holding the freshly developed photographs from the Scarborough's camera. "Sheriff, you need to see this." He laid out 3 photographs. The first, the family in the car, smiling. The second, the road at night, blurred, like it was taken in a rush. The third, the same road, but something dark loomed in the center, tall, human-shaped, out of focus. Not a creature. Not wings. Not eyes. A man. But massive. And wearing something metallic across the shoulders, catching the flash with a cold reflection. Riggs leaned closer. "Is that armor?" "No," the tech whispered. "It looks more like a harness." A chill spread down Riggs's spine. Something had been in that forest with them. Something human. But before he could speak, the station lights flickered, and the patrol car outside blared its horn in a single shrill cry. Riggs ran to the window. The cruiser's headlights were pointing at the tree line, and halfway between the trees and the road stood a silhouette, massive, motionless, staring directly at the station. Then it stepped backward and disappeared into the dark. Riggs whispered the words no officer ever wanted to say. "Oh God, this wasn't an accident." By dawn, Point Pleasant had the hollow, stunned quiet of a town waiting for a storm that never ends. A thin frost blanketed the streets, masking the worry etched into every window, every doorstep, every half-open curtain where someone stood watching the tree lean as if expecting it to look back. Sheriff Harlan Riggs had barely slept an hour. The photograph from the Scarborough's camera wouldn't leave his mind. The towering figure, blurred but unmistakably human, glinting with metal like a harness strapped across its ribs. The rumors swirling around town all insisted on wings, glowing red eyes, a beast. But the evidence told a different story. Someone was out there. Someone made this happen. And that was somehow worse. The sheriff's department gathered at 8:06 a.m. sharp. Riggs stood at the head of the briefing room, dark circles under his eyes, a stack of files in front of him. "We're not entertaining the monster stories," he said flatly. "Something took that family. Something with intent." A deputy raised his hand. "Sir, what about the sighting last night?" Riggs didn't blink. "Until I have proof of supernatural creatures, I'm investigating a crime. A human crime." But even as he said it, he remembered the way the shape had stood in the dark. Too still, too tall, too comfortable in the cold. A man shouldn't move like that. And a man shouldn't disappear that fast. Still, he pushed the thought down. Fear made people exaggerate. Darkness played tricks. And hysteria was contagious. He couldn't afford to let hysteria solve this case. By noon, news vans had already begun creeping into Point Pleasant. Reporters wanted interviews, statements, rumors, anything to feed the growing frenzy. Riggs refused them all and slipped out the back of the station to avoid the cameras. He met Howard Mason at the edge of the TNT area. The older man looked shaken, like the frost had gotten into his bones. "You sure you want to come back out here?" Riggs asked. Howard hesitated. "No. But I saw their car. I found that scarf. I'm not staying home hoping someone else figures it out." Riggs respected that. They moved into the forest, following the same path the Scarboroughs must have taken. Frost cracked under their boots. Branches shifted in the wind. Every sound felt amplified. And then, something odd. A patch of disturbed earth, wide and circular, with compressed lines cutting through the frost. "Not tire tracks," Howard murmured, kneeling. "Wide pattern. Heavy. Equipment." Riggs asked. Howard frowned. "Not the kind we use." Nearby, they found a broken tree branch, snapped clean through, higher than either of them could reach. Riggs felt his stomach drop. A tall man. A strong man. Someone trained. But the most unsettling detail was something Howard discovered lodged in the bark of a nearby trunk, a metal fragment the size of a coin, dark, cold, and stamped with a faded marking. "Looks like a serial code," Riggs whispered. But before they could examine it further, the radio clipped to Riggs's belt crackled violently, cutting through static with a panicked voice. "Sheriff, we've got another call, out near the highway. Visibility's bad, but, sir, someone's reporting a figure watching traffic from the overpass." Riggs and Howard exchanged a look. Not good. Not good at all. They rushed back toward their vehicle, but halfway down the path, a sharp metallic clang echoed through the woods, like a steel door slamming shut deep underground. Riggs froze. "Did you hear that?" Howard nodded slowly. That wasn't an animal. That was machinery. But there were no active facilities out here. And the old tunnels hadn't been used since the 1940s. Everything was supposed to be sealed. Everything. Riggs opened his map, tracing the echo's direction with his finger. "It's coming from the restricted section," he muttered. D12. The same section circled on the old documents left on his desk. Howard took a slow breath. "Sheriff, what were they doing out here?" Riggs didn't know. But he suddenly felt like they weren't just investigating a disappearance. They were trespassing into something they weren't meant to find. Back in town, the situation was unraveling fast. Another witness came forward that afternoon. A teenage boy named Miles who claimed he saw a man standing on the Silver Bridge the night before. Not walking. Standing on the outer beam 30 feet above the road. Perfectly balanced. When Riggs interviewed him privately, Miles shook so badly he could barely hold the cup of water the sheriff gave him. "It wasn't an animal," the boy whispered. "Everyone keeps saying creature, monster, wings, but it wasn't like that." Riggs leaned in. "Tell me exactly what you saw." The boy swallowed. Hard. He had something metal strapped across his chest. And when he turned to look at me, the headlights bounced off it. It hurt to look at. Like it was designed to reflect. Riggs's blood chilled. The same harness from the photograph. What about his eyes? Riggs asked softly. Miles wiped his face. "I didn't see eyes. Just dark. Like he wasn't really looking at anything. Like he was listening." Riggs frowned. Listening to what? Miles hesitated. Something inside the bridge. That evening, Riggs returned to the evidence room to pick up the metal fragment they'd found in the woods. But when he opened the storage drawer, it was empty. He stared at the vacant space, confusion twisting into anger. He checked the log. No one had signed it out. No one even knew it was there except him, Howard, and the tech. He checked the nearby shelves. Nothing. Then he found the evidence technician sitting in the break room, pale and visibly shaken. "Where's the fragment?" Riggs demanded. The tech's voice trembled. "Sheriff, someone already took it." Riggs stiffened. "Who?" "I don't know. I went to lunch. When I came back, the drawer was open." Riggs' jaw clenched. "Did you see anything unusual?" The tech hesitated. "Just one thing. The door to the evidence room. It wasn't broken, but the frame looked like it had been pulled. like someone forced it open without damaging the lock. Riggs stared at him. Pulled? Not pushed. The tech nodded, like from the inside. A silent dread settled over the room. Someone had been there. Someone had taken the evidence. And whoever it was knew exactly what to remove, and how to avoid every camera. Riggs's radio suddenly exploded with urgent chatter. "Sheriff! You need to get to the riverfront right now. A truck driver says someone just climbed the tower at the Silver Bridge, and, sir, you're not going to believe this, they're standing on the top beam." Riggs didn't waste a breath. He ran. Because whatever was happening, whatever had been stalking Point Pleasant, whatever had taken the Scarborough family, it wasn't finished. Not even close. The Silver Bridge rose out of the fog like a skeleton of steel ribs, each cable humming with the low vibrating tension of the Ohio River below. Traffic had been halted. Floodlights cut through the mist. Police cars lined the road with their engines still running, exhaust drifting like pale ghosts across the asphalt. Sheriff Harlan Riggs stepped out of his cruiser and immediately felt the cold sting of December wind against his face. He scanned the tower, up until the beam disappeared into fog. Halfway up, a figure stood perfectly still on the outer support. Not climbing. Not hiding. Just standing. A man. A silhouette. Dark, long-limbed, and rigid as if waiting for something. Deputies raised binoculars. Civilians whispered from behind barricades. And Riggs felt a pulsing dread collect in his chest, heavier than anything he'd carried since the investigation began. This wasn't random. This wasn't madness. This was intentional. "Sheriff!" a state trooper called out. We tried shouting. He won't respond. Riggs didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the figure, still unwavering, poised like a man who'd rehearsed every step leading up to this moment. "Keep the area clear," Riggs ordered quietly. No sudden movements. No lights directly on him. And then he climbed. The wind grew harsher the higher he ascended, turning each rung icy beneath his gloves. Halfway up, he felt the tower vibrate, metal groaning in a slow rhythmic pattern that didn't match the wind or passing traffic. A mechanical pulse. Deep. Internal. Like something was operating inside the bridge. He paused, gripping the ladder. Miles's words returned. He was listening to something inside the bridge. Riggs continued to climb, slower now, listening. The higher he went, the clearer the sound became, metal shifting, a groan that wasn't natural. Like weight pulling from within. When he reached the beam, he pulled himself over carefully and steadied his feet on the narrow platform. The figure stood 10 yards away. Not supernatural. Not monstrous. Human. A man wearing a heavy dark jacket, strapped with metallic harness rails and reinforced plates like an experimental load-bearing system. Not built for flight. Built for impact resistance. Built for survival. Riggs stepped forward. "This is Sheriff Riggs. I'm not here to hurt you." The man didn't move. "You're not here to jump," Riggs said. "You're not here by accident. So talk to me." A long, brittle silence followed. Then the figure finally spoke, quiet, hoarse, barely human in its exhaustion. "I told them this bridge couldn't handle the weight. I told them, and they buried the reports." Riggs froze. This wasn't a monster warning people. This was a man who had been ignored. "What's your name?" Riggs asked carefully. The man lifted his head. The fog parted just enough for Riggs to see his face. Gaunt, sunken eyes, pupils dilated with terror or lack of sleep. Not glowing. Not inhuman. "Elias Turner," he whispered. "Structural engineer. Ohio Department of Highways." Riggs breathed out slowly. "You worked on the bridge." "I inspected it," Elias corrected. "And I found the fracture months ago. A defect in the eye bar. Microscopic at first, then spreading." Riggs felt his pulse accelerate. "Why didn't you report it?" "I did," Elias said, voice cracking. "They dismissed it. They said repairing the bridge would cost too much. Too much steel. Too much downtime. Too much money. He laughed, a broken hollow sound swallowed by the wind. So I kept coming back at night, monitoring it, watching it fail piece by piece. Riggs stepped closer. Elias, the Scarborough family, what happened to them? Elias closed his eyes, breath trembling. They weren't supposed to be there. They followed me into the TNT tunnels. Saw equipment they shouldn't have. Heard the bridge stress meters pulsing. They thought I was sabotaging the town. Riggs felt his stomach drop. Did you hurt them? Elias shook his head sharply. No. They ran. They got lost. By the time I found the car, the forest had already taken them. Riggs studied him, his shaking hands, the exhaustion in his voice. This was a man unraveling, not a killer stalking families. What are you doing up here now? Riggs asked quietly. Elias looked down at the steel beneath their feet. It's failing, he whispered. Tonight. The whole structure. I tried to warn them. I tried to slow it down. Those sounds, he gestured to the vibrating cables. That's the fracture spreading. Riggs felt the tower tremble under his boots. Elias, we need to get off this bridge. Now. The man shook his head. If it collapses with people on it, they'll blame me. They already do. They'll call me a monster. A chilling realization clicked together in Riggs's mind. The sightings. The panic. The red eyes were reflections off the metallic plates. The wings were shadows. The creature was fear filling in the blanks. Elias, Riggs said, voice steady. You're not the monster in this story. But before he could reach him, a deafening crack tore through the bridge. The beam beneath them lurched. Riggs grabbed the railing as the tower shook violently, bolts screeching under pressure. Elias staggered but didn't fall. He turned toward Riggs with a calm, heartbreaking resignation. It's too late. Don't. Riggs shouted, reaching for him. But Elias stepped backward, off the beam, and disappeared into the fog below. Riggs lunged forward, arm outstretched, but there was nothing to grab. Only empty mist and the echo of rushing wind. A second crack detonated through the structure. Sheriff! Get off the bridge! Voices screamed from below. Riggs scrambled down the ladder as the steel vibrated beneath his hands. When he reached the ground, state troopers pulled him behind barricades. Moments later, the silver bridge groaned, twisted, then gave way like a colossal spine snapping in half. The collapse was slow, horrifying, inevitable. A roar of metal. A plume of debris. And then silence so complete it felt supernatural. News would report structural failure. Investigators would confirm the fracture. Officials would claim the warnings were never documented. But Riggs knew the truth. Elias Turner had been the town's final alarm. Not a monster. Not a myth. Just a man trying to warn the world before it was too late. And Point Pleasant ignored him. In the weeks that followed, people still whispered about the creature on the bridge. Some swore they'd seen wings. Others described glowing red eyes watching the disaster from above. But Riggs said nothing. Because sometimes, truth doesn't outweigh belief. And sometimes, belief becomes its own kind of monster. He looked out at the rebuilt span months later, the river calm beneath it. The wind carried a faint metallic hum, but only he noticed. As he turned away, he murmured under his breath. If you think this story was unsettling, you're not ready for what comes next.